Welcome to A Turn for the Better. I'm Dick Singh. The project this month is going to kind of go hand in hand with the theme that Chris and Cindy have set up as a tray. I'm going to produce a wine or beverage caddy. What it does is holds mainly a bottle that is cold. It will sweat and it will protect the table from the moisture. Kind of a neat little project. Basically nothing more than a small bowl, and we'll go through and show you how to set that up. I'm going to be using a piece of maple. Got a little bit of figure in it, which I think is always complements anything you do. I've drilled a 1/4-inch hole, and I'm going to use the screw. Most of the chucks come with a screw for your initial drive. I've installed my screw, and I'm just going to take and turn my block of wood on here. This will give me the initial turn. Now the top of the caddy is where I did drill the screw. In other words, the area that I have exposed is now the rear or the bottom of the caddy. To rough my piece down, I'm going to be using a 1/2-inch detailed gouge. Anything will work, spindle gouge, bowl gouge. This just happens to be handy, and I like the thickness of the gullet. Remember, start your tool high. I'm just going to clean up the diameter. Straighten up my base. I'm going to take a 3/8 spindle gouge and cut my rebate for the chuck. Want to keep it just basically flat, nice and clean on the bottom here, with just a tad of the dovetail. I'm checking to make sure that my rebate will fit my chuck, and it will. So as far as I'm concerned, I can turn this around right now. When cutting a rebate for an expansion mode, I think most people miss one feature. That chuck holds either in expansion or compression mode. That's only half of the necessary hold on that chuck. Either we have to go against the face, or if your bottom of your jaws are flat, you can use that in a tenon type hold. Right now I've made sure that I have a slight dovetail, and the mating surface to those jaws is a nice clean situation. Now when I put it in there, I like to hit it. As you can hear, everything is solid, which tells me that that piece is flat against those jaws, which will help keep it from rocking. The expansion of the jaws are going to take and drive the piece. Now that I have my workpiece mounted, I'm going to start and use a pull cut and do a little bit of shaping of what I think my outside should be. That's just to remove some of the material and give myself a general idea of what I'm going to be working with when I start working my inside. I've switched to a 3/8 bowl gouge. Has a swept back design on it, which really doesn't matter as long as the end has sufficient angle on it to reach the bottom of that bowl. Notice how high I am in relation to the center line? That makes a decent cut. Did you notice when I got to the very middle, it was making kind of a thumping sound? That's my fault. As you approach the center, you should slow down because the surface speed is so much less that you have to allow the wood to come to the tool. I'm probably just being a little overzealous and forcing the issue here because I'm roughing it out. I believe it's time we should kind of check where our bottom is. I'm just looking at it, I have plenty of material. I still have probably 3/4 of an inch or 7/8 of an inch material in the bottom. Now, if you have a problem taking and measuring with a ruler, there are other means of getting that. This is a settable, I guess would be the proper word for it, calipers. In other words, you go in and you set it and you can open them up and bring them out. With these, I can go in between the jaws, find the depth of where I just contact the wood, open it up, bring it out, and that is the exact depth of how much wood I have left in the bottom. Nobody says you have to go only one way. You can come back as long as you ride the bevel and flatten that surface out. Just be careful that you don't run into the wall. Looking at my caddy here, I'm almost under the assumption that it's too deep. I think it should be a little less, so I'm just going to remove some of the material off the top. And after all that work of hollowing it out. Okay, just the overall height looks a lot better to me. Now I'll go back and continue hollowing a little of that out. I'm going to check one more time. It's easier to check than it is to try and put wood back on. Okay, I'm in pretty good shape there. What I want to do now is check what I have for a bottom. I do need some width in there. What I've got here is roughly 3 5/8 inches. If you're unsure, grab a bottle and take and check. Now when I start opening this up, I want to open the top because I want it flared open a little bit. So I'm just not going to make a perfectly vertical wall. I'm going to start splaying it down a little bit. We'll give her another shot. Yeah, I'm going to change over to a different gouge. I'm going to use a little 1/4 inch bowl gouge. It just seems to cut easier sometimes when I'm on the inside. Has probably about a 50-degree bevel on it, which will allow me to get down on the bottom and come across and not fall out on the side. Love those little fine shavings. What I'm going to do is start in the center with this one and use the bevel to try and make a flat surface. I guess what we should also do is make sure of what we have for a wall thickness. Okay, I need to take a little more out of that bottom. I'm also going to take and just kind of check to see how flat my bottom is, which is pretty good shape. I'm pretty happy with the bottom thickness, and it seems to be relatively flat. So I'm going in and finish it off now. I'm going to use a box scraper. This area and this area are both sharp with a radius. In other words, I'm going to try and follow across the bottom flat into that corner. Now this is not a 90-degree corner, and you cannot cut both those surfaces at the same time, as you will overload the scraper and it will go bang. So be careful that you only use one surface and very lightly at it. It's not meant to move a lot of wood, it's meant to enhance a surface. I've made the transition back. Go back and re-clean it again. Now when I get to that corner, I have to be very careful. Now I've changed from the one on the bottom to the one on the side, and I'm very lightly bringing that out. Okay, the reason it's hollering is it's a scrape, and all I'm doing is on that small of amount of material. So what I'm going to do here is stand this tool up in a shear scrape mode and just shear scrape that surface. Coming back to the outside, I could have done this before, but I didn't quite know how much material I had. Right now I'm just taking a very fine shear cut, trying to make the outside surface the best that I can. This should bring it up pretty close to what I'm looking for. I would say our surface is ready to sand. I am going to put a little bit of a radius on this area. I'm sure I'm going to change it when I reverse it, but at least it will give me an idea of what my piece looks like in case I want to alter something right now. I don't want too large of a radius here. I want it to look kind of clean and neat. Just break the edge slightly. We don't want anybody cut. I'm starting with 240 cloth. I feel cloth is a little bit more abrasive than what paper is. I've worked through my grits and I'm now to 600. I don't know if you need to go to 600, but I don't care what you use for a finish. Your finish is only as good as the surface that you put it on. The finish I'm going to use is nothing more than Satin Gloss Deft straight out of the bottle. Or the can, I should say. Seeing how we're going to have moisture on this, I think any polyurethane or anything that does a good job of sealing would be a fine finish. Wax would not. Just going to give it a couple good sloppy coats here and allow it to soak in. If you see any dry spots, such as right there, let it absorb a little more. Once that coat would soak into the wood and you allow it to dry, it's going to seal it. So it won't accept a lot more. Just going to take and wipe off the excess. And I'm going to turn it on and just give it a buff. Come out looking pretty nice. What I am going to do is give it another couple coats the same way as I just have done. I'm going to use a piece of MDF, medium density fiberboard, to take and make a jam chuck and reverse this to finish the bottom. Now, I normally save my jam chucks. I reuse them time and time again. And I will with this one. Just kind of guessing. Take your time. It's easier to take a little more off than it is to put some on. Occasionally, you may make that where it's really not quite tight enough. There's a couple ways around that. One is just a piece of paper towel. By the sound of that, it sounded like it went home quite well. If you feel uncomfortable, there's nothing says you can't put the tailstock up against it. I want a nice flat surface for it to set on. And I don't like any means showing of how I held it. Okay, I'm going to finish off the bottom nice and smooth first. I'm going to come across the bottom and go over towards the edge, riding the bevel. And then I always like to put on my signature, which is a small bead. Couple little ridges there I'll just take out. And we should have a break on our corner. And we're ready to sand. It has finish on it now. It's ready to come out. We have one that sets nice and flat, and I think we're completed with our little caddy. Here's the caddy that we finished in this segment. Nice little gift for someone or yourself. Of course, that only opens up a whole door of different ideas. The one we did today was relatively simple, but it lends itself to more adventure at the lathe. Maybe a little deeper, a little bit more of a refined shape on the sides. Kind of a plate type, made out of cherry. Hard maple, little sapwood, heartwood, burned in with a wire on the small one and a piece of Formica on the large side. A little bit of figured walnut, got a nice smooth flowing shape. Piece of ash that is totally different, makes a spiral going down. The only thing you have to do with this is make sure your wall thicknesses are right. And one that totally reaches out and kind of grabs you. And again, its thickness should be uniform to make a nice line. Not only in shapes, but occasionally you will end up with a piece of wood that is really spectacular. Save that one for a special occasion. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. And thank you for watching A Turn for the Better. I'm Dick Singh.